Hello everybody, Bill Harrison here with Hardened Power Systems. We're going to try something a little bit different. You folks, if you follow our channel at all, you're used to seeing pretty technical videos that are normally very product specific. For the most part, up until this point, that's the only thing we've used the channel for, is to introduce a new product, do an in-depth explanation of it, I'm looking forward to this. What we're doing, this is my friend and my co-worker, Sergio. I'm sure if you guys have called or emailed, you've communicated with Sergio. He handles logistics and customer support. He's kind of the first line for our customers to interact with us and to make sure that we're supporting you. And what we're going to try to do is something that we kind of are jokingly calling the Hardened Power half amp hour. I thought amp hour was kind of clever, sort of a play on words, but I don't think we want to put you through this for an hour or try to do it for an hour, so it's the half amp hour. We're going to try to do it somewhat regularly. We're going to try to keep things kind of informal and conversational with an emphasis on questions, answers, tips, tricks. We'll touch on new products. I guess we're going to kind of see where it goes. But at least for this first episode, Sergio has some crib notes. He's got some questions. I suppose we should just get started, right? So what you got?
We usually get calls from customers asking certain questions, and I figured that was the best way for us to go right off the bat. We get general questions about charging, how to charge with solar, how to charge from your vehicle. So I figured Bill can address those, sure. So we'll start with that and then move on to some other things people have asked about.
Yep, and I'm sure that a lot of the calls relate to things like the juice boxes and the Commander, the Recons, the larger rechargeable gear. First rule of thumb, I'm sure you know what I'm going to say, master switch must be on.
Yes.
Some companies don't do that. We always do that. If the master switch is off on a piece of our gear, that machine is off. At least as it relates to any phantom loads. Okay, and a phantom load can be created by something like a charge controller or a solar controller. So if you're trying to charge like a juice box and you're wondering why it's not charging, just make sure the main switch is on. And that makes sense anyway, because once you turn on the main switch with most of our equipment, that also is going to bring online some sort of a meter or a gauge. So you'd see a voltmeter or you'd see one of our power meters. And since you've plugged it in either to solar or to AC or to a vehicle, then you're seeing the voltage increase, and that's reassuring you that yes, it's working. So number one, power switch on. To be able to charge from multiple sources is important. We try to do that as much as possible. The juice box is very typical of this. You can charge it from AC, and I think everything is global.
Yes.
Yeah. So the internal charger is going to handle a global voltage. It's always a three-stage automatic charge controller, so you can kind of set it and forget it. The solar side, our equipment's going to have some sort of verbiage that says what the maximum solar is. But that's also going to be a multi-stage automatic charge controller, so you can plug it in and just let it go. With all of our equipment, you can charge it while using it. Some places don't do that. I think it's very important. Imagine a guy doing comms in the field. You're outside, right, and you're running your radio off of battery power. It is so nice to be able to throw a solar panel 10 feet away in the sunshine, sit over here in the shade. And depending on the panel and depending on the conversation duty cycle or how much you're using something, you might not even be running a deficit. That solar panel might be putting in more than you're even taking out. Vehicle charging, good tip is Although it sometimes works with the vehicle off, it's kind of rare. Normally you need the vehicle running in order to get the 14 plus voltage that you'll get from a running vehicle, instead of the 12 and a half you'll get from a sitting vehicle. And we sell cables like this, cigarette socket to a male DC coax, plug it right into the machine. And that's obviously useful, especially if you're on your way to something. We've got people that deploy or people that respond to situations. Nice to be on your way, topping off your gear. So, yeah.
And the key thing there is just to be sure that it's charging properly. It works a lot better on the vehicle that's running.
Yes. The reason why that's important to be aware of is if your vehicle's not running and the alternator isn't online and you're only using the battery, you're trying to charge a 12-volt battery with a 12-volt battery. Mm-hmm. And in between those two batteries is a charge controller that has some efficiency losses. So you simply have to have a higher voltage coming into that charger than you can expect that charger to put back out.
That makes sense.
Yep.
Makes sense.
And then what was it else? A field expedient. I don't want to say it's not recommended because a lot of our customers do this. But remember that the Andersons are connected to the system bus in pretty much all of our gear. So if you didn't have the right adapter, but you had a 12-volt battery or a vehicle or something, you could, in a field expedient way, charge the batteries by plugging directly into the Andersons and bypass the chargers. And as long as you're aware that there's no intelligence behind that charging, that you could potentially overcharge the batteries if you plug that in and left and came back a few hours or a few days later, you could have a ruined battery. But if it's a matter of just of plugging the battery in and making sure that it's either topped off or that you're charging it because you can. Sometimes, especially in situations where people are deployed to help or it's disaster response or something like that, there's a generator running for a specific period of time. Sometimes it's nice to be able to capitalize on that and top your gear off while that's running. Right. So,
very good. One of the other questions we often get about our equipment is, is your equipment EMF proof?
EMP.
EMP
right?
proof. I'm sorry. EMP proof. And that's a good question, and I'll let Bill explain about how our equipment, what it's in. You all are pretty aware that we use ammo cans.
Mostly, yep.
And with that, I'll turn it over to you, Bill.
Interesting subject. There's, I think, a lot more debate than there is actual knowledge. Mm-hmm. And that's maybe not particularly somebody's fault. It's just everybody is kind of talking about something that's somewhat unknowable. Okay.
So until it really happens, we're not going to know.
Is it natural or is it man-made? If it's either, what's the power? But say, an obvious concern now, if it's man-made, is it more than one weapon? What's the altitude? What time of day? What's the weather? Mm-hmm. What's the yield of that weapon? How far are you really from that ignition point? So many variables that you don't really have something that you can wrap your head around and have a strong opinion. But we do have some good information. The military's provided some. There's white papers online. We're getting to the point now where there's definitely been some tests. In a way, we've tested it enough to know that it's a problem, or could be, that it's a real thing. It's not a boogeyman. The EMP effect is legit. Now, the Carrington event, 100 odd years ago. Now that's one thing, and that was natural occurring. That was the sun. Now what we're looking at is weapons that can actually be optimized for a damaging effect in the EMP spectrum. So anyway, the military has done a fair amount of research, probably a lot more than we're aware of. But there's some white papers online and there's some documentation. Three things to keep in mind with EMP protection. if the assumption is that the goal is to make a container, a box, a Faraday cage, the first thing is you want seams lapped and welded, which makes sense. You know, imagine like something that would contain water. You know, that it does not have breaches, that has tight seams. Now, there's probably some people right now that are jumping up and down because it's true that a Faraday cage can be composed of mesh. Right? Think about the window in your microwave. And that's because EMP radiation, or at least electrical radiation, wants to find long gaps. That's what it is best at getting through. So a mesh is also effective, potentially, especially if there's layers of it. But for the most part, what you want to make sure of is you don't have long seams that are exposed. Now, happily, with our stuff built into an ammo can, that's how the cans are constructed. They're lapped and welded. There's one exception we'll talk about in a second. The second thing that you try to do with some sort of a EMP can or container or Faraday cage is to electrically isolate whatever you're protecting from the can itself. You certainly wouldn't want some thing you're trying to protect and have part of its metal structure touching the inside of a metal can, and you just defeated the purpose of having it. And we do that quite deliberately. All of our equipment, the chassis, so this is a Recon that's at different stages of being built, but the chassis are HDPE. This is all plastic. And if you notice, all the screws, all the stainless steel screws are pretty aggressively recessed. Right? Whole idea is just that the
no metal will be touching.
it is electrically isolated. Probably the last thing to be aware of with EMP is, if possible, just don't have it plugged in. That can be a tall order because you're busy running your life and you've got all sorts of things plugged in. But that is because the nature of the threat is one that travels down lines, conductors. The longer the conductor, the more potential for accumulated energy. By the time that long wire, think our national grid. You know, you're taking telephone lines and power lines and turning them into antennas. Okay? And if that antenna travels 50 miles and terminates in your living room, and that's the first time it's got nowhere else to go, it's going to make a mess.
Pretty much fry everything.
Right. I guess one thing I would say, and we'll put links in the description of the video, a guy by the name of Dr. Arthur Bradley. I would not want to play chess with this guy. Literally a NASA rocket scientist. Also a very good author, fictional author. But he's got a lot of free information on EMP. He's taken it on as a bit of a hobby. I've communicated with Dr. Bradley. Super nice guy. Definitely his heart's in the right place. Knows what he's talking about. He's done a lot of testing, and he has tested ammo cans at specific, I think 500 megahertz, I'm not sure, at specific frequencies. And a can just by itself, a standard ammo can like we provide with our equipment, is, I think he would probably call it a decent EMP-proof box. It's decent because of what a few minutes ago when I said, I'd tell you in a second, if there's a weakness with an ammo can, and there is, it's the gasket. Right, so you want your ammo to stay waterproof. That's what the military wanted.
So they've
got a rubber gasket all the way around, and there you go. You've got that long seam that you don't want if you're trying to resist EMP. So Bradley shows, and if you guys look at his YouTube channel, you'll find these videos pretty easily. But he shows testing a can standard, and he gets about 30 dB attenuation, which is pretty good. But then he replaces the gasket with a metallic gasket, and therefore gives up waterproofness to some extent. and he gets like 105 dB. So it goes from being pretty good to being
really good,
spectacular, right? So, and then one last thing just to mention, and it's kind of humorous, but it's also the truth. We just decided not to make any EMP claims.
right?
And maybe we should. Maybe there's some sales that are lost because people assume that since we don't address it directly, that this stuff is, you know, not at all good for it. Truth of it is, our stuff would be pretty good for EMP proof. The humorous aspect is I could say guaranteed 100% EMP proof, and then what are you going to do, right?
Say.
If something happens and we're knocked back to the 1800s, if you're going to ride your horse to Middle Tennessee to complain to me about the juice box, yeah, it's
You're
so
probably not going to.
maybe we'll update things. Maybe we'll add something to say that there is I don't know, moderate EMP protection. It's nice to under promise, right, instead of something else.
And deliver them not.
Right, absolutely, sure.
One of the other things that's come up, and it's interesting to me because I'm pretty new at it myself, is, you know, how to get into comms. Communication in all parts of life is important. But, you know, when you have emergencies, you have storms, tornadoes, hurricanes, anything like that, it's important to be able to communicate. And, of course, a lot of times that's the first thing that goes down. And
Yep.
people have trouble. I have gotten set up a little bit. Mine is just GMRS. I'm not, haven't gotten quite into ham. I'm putting my foot in.
You're running an operator at the house,
Yes,
right?
an operator, and I think we have an operator sitting back here, yeah, right here.
So what we're saying specifically is how to get into comms. Well,
And this, the small radio that fits in that, that's the MXT 100,
or the 105.
or the 105 will fit in that. I have the 100, and I use it mainly on our property to communicate back to the house.
Sure.
You know, we use handheld Bofang radios
Yep.
when I'm out and about, and then I can call the house, or if anything happens, they can get a hold of me, or if I fall out of the tree and I'm
Yep.
still able to
Yep.
push the button, I can
And
get help.
property like yours, somebody could be a distance away, right? Bunch of kids, bunch of extended family. You've got outbuildings,
Yes.
right? So you have an operator and a 105 in the house with one of Dr. Fong's antennas.
Yes,
Right.
and I did order Dr. Fong's antenna, and he's a great guy. Talked to him, and you know, he asked me what I needed, told him what I
Yep.
had, and he delivered it, put it in the mail, got to me, and you know, you have the choice of getting it in the PVC
Sure.
or
Yep.
not.
Yep.
I went ahead and got it in the PVC because mine's a smaller antenna.
To me, the cool thing about what Dr. Fong is doing, his graduate students are building these antennas
Yeah, that's
as
pretty
part
neat.
of their coursework, right? So you can buy these antennas for probably about a third of what they should cost. And the money helps, I'm not sure what projects or whatever, but it helps pay for the course.
Right. Buy more supplies.
Yeah, and Dr. Fong holds a handful of antenna patents. I mean, he's not kidding around either. He really does know what he's doing. And they can cut these antennas for like 2-meter bands and stuff too. It's not just GMRS. But the original question about getting into comms, you're doing it, right?
Oh.
Think about it.
Yeah,
you know,
I guess so.
you got the need. It's like, you know, I can't see as far as I need to be worried about, so I need some kind of communication. You start, most people, the Walmart FRS bubble pack, right? And it says right on it, it's got a 50-mile range. Okay?
Right.
If you shoot it out of a cannon, maybe. But if you're actually talking on, you know, half mile, maybe a bit more line of sight. And then hopefully you start getting into GMRS. Now there is a license required for GMS, but there is no test required. I got my license less than 24 hours after going online, paying $65 or $70. And one of the nice things, covers the family, right? So and I did actually I did talk to a nice lady at the FCC for a definition about immediate family, because that's the wording, is that the license covers the license holder and their immediate family. And actually, it's pretty generous, their definition. Kids, parents, grandparents, grandkids, siblings, I want to say cousins. I mean, you're talking
Family.
what we would call an extended family.
Right.
And irrespective of geography.
That's
Okay?
pretty neat.
So if your son is in a different state, he
He's
can
covered.
use your call sign on GMS and be legal. Right? So in any event, GMRS is a nice way to get into comms. And you know, it's funny, I know I'm saying this, and some of our best customers, and we love you guys, are the hams,
And we
right?
do love them.
And they're ripping their hair out. If you want to be serious about communications, if you want to reach significant distances, it's ham radio. You know, lots of resources online. Study, get your license. You know, get your tech license. Get some guys will say, you know, buy the best radio you can right up front. I'd rather have a half a dozen cheap radios that are all different, and find out what's good and bad about them, and how the different radios operate, and then start to get a better opinion of where I'm going to put that precious money. But in any event, get some radios, get on the air, get talking, find an Elmer, right? Find a club. There's all sorts of resources. But if a third of our customers are ham guys, and a third of our customers are maybe military first responders, Gov, FEMA, that kind of thing. The other third, they're preppers, campers, hunters. They know that comms are important, but they don't want another hobby. They're not looking to get, they're not interested in a ham license yet. We've had quite a few that get the GMRS ticket, start using it, and sure enough, 6 months later, I hear they got their ham license. And I love that. I think that's great. It's a great gateway drug. But
You got to get started somewhere.
do something.
Yeah.
Right, absolutely. Get started. Because what'll happen is, what hopefully will happen, like around here, you know, we're in the country. And, you know, you mentioned the Baofeng, and I'm sure there was some more
Snickering over.
gnashing of teeth. Myself, I like the Baofengs. There's some legal considerations, and they're valid, that they should be considerations. It's kind of like a hammer. You can use it to pound a lot more than a nail if you're going to start swinging it around. And a Baofeng radio will let you do things that you should not do. Burden's on the operator, okay? And when it's a $35 radio and you're warning people you have to know how to use it, they're just going to spend the $35 and play with it.
Right.
That's where people get upset about Baofengs.
Getting
But I've had, I don't know how many dozens of Baofeng radios over the years. I've given them away, I've loaned them, I've lost them, I've never broken one. Now, that's impressive. For a $35, $40, $50 Chinese radio. But if you want to get into comms, jump on Amazon, eBay, buy don't buy one. Buy a couple of Baofengs, get a better antenna, spend $20 and get a decent whip antenna. As soon as you need them and have them, and the wife is like, wow, you know, she can reach you, and you know, you're out of power, or there was a weather event or whatever, and all of a sudden you're relying on these radios, let that settle in for a week or two, and then tell her you want to spend a couple $100 on a nice radio, right? It is the kind of thing where it's baby steps, but the more you use it, the more you realize just how valuable it is. From here in our shop, with a Midland MXT 400, a 40-watt GMRS radio, and we've got ham radios too, but by way of example, the city of Pulaski is about 10 miles from here through rough terrain, hills, woods, there's lots between us and the town. But we can have a guy in a radio with like a handheld Midland or a Baofeng or a little 105, and our 40 watts here at the shop with one of Dr. Fong's antennas on a flagpole mounted to the roof, and we can hit Pulaski from here. That's pretty good. Pretty good for something that you don't have to study for an exam to have the privilege of operating it.
Right.
So getting into comms, just get started. And don't be shy of GMRS or Baofeng, but understand it's like a lot of, you'll spend more money and time than you think. Because it's cool and it's fun. It's kind of like guns or cars, right? Or computers or whatever. You'll spend more than you think, but it's worth it.
But the things we were saying about GMRS, it's a good way to, I don't want to say inexpensively, but for a lot less money to get started in something, learn.
I'll tell you, when I can hand my wife a GMRS radio, and she looks at it, and it's just a number, and that's the channel, and there's push to talk.
Right.
Right? Because she's not into this. You know, she's not like, ooh, I'm going to figure out how to run this radio. But I can hand it to her and say, I'm on, 15. No problem. That, she's more than content to do her part of that and use it. Yeah, that's where you get traction, right?
Yeah.
Because it doesn't do much good just to talk to yourself on a radio. There's got to be somebody on the other end. For most of it, it's going to be family, friends. Another thing, too, that reminds me of is if there's an event, anything from a weather event to EMP to zombies to whatever, if something happens, most likely your area of care is going to drastically shrink.
Right.
Right? All of a sudden, you're going to be more concerned with what's 5 or 10 miles around you. The distance you'd walk in a half day, right? So if all of a sudden that's the area of operations you're worried about, you don't really need an HF rig that you can bounce off the ionosphere and talk to somebody overseas. You need something where you've got a half dozen radios you can give them to the neighbors and to the kids and to the guy who's at the end of the subdivision where the street comes into the sub, and you've got maybe a little operator or something like that as a base station, and everybody can easily talk.
Right. Well, that's kind of the approach I took, and I went ahead and got Dr. Fong's antenna, and I got we're fortunately, our property sits at 1,000 feet.
Yeah, I'm a little jealous.
So at 1,000 feet plus, I put up a collapsible flagpole, so it puts my antenna up 20 feet. And that gives me the ability, most of my kids live within 10, 15 miles.
Yep.
And I can pretty much contact all of them.
Yep. And in the day of cell phones, I'm sorry, that's just cool.
It is. It's
just nice, right? And if you ever want them to be like, Dad, I'm sure glad that you figured, just wait till something happens where it makes a difference.
Right.
It's
when your cell phone is blank and you can get on that radio.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. One of the last things we wanted to cover, we've had.
This is the half amp hour, right?
The half amp hour, so we don't want to go way over.
Okay, so we're going to talk about new stuff.
Yes, we've had some people call. People call and say, "Is there anything new on your board?" And so we do have a few things here.
Yeah, boy, it could be the Hardened Power hour and a half, real easily. I'm going to leave this stuff here and trust that you guys can see it reasonably well. This is the new Juicebox 1K. You'll notice the construction style is different. It's not an ammo can, right? But this thing is a hoss. It is. It's over a kilowatt of stored energy. It's by far the most powerful system we've ever built. And we're trying to respond to what customers seem to want.
Exactly.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So a much larger battery, a 600-watt inverter. That inverter is a pure sine. A larger solar controller, 20 amps. You can put 200 watts of solar into this. Fundamentally, it's the same as most of our gear in the way that it can be charged and discharged. It's definitely built for real life. It's meant to take some abuse and keep working. But yeah, that's the Juicebox 1K. You'll find it on the site. We don't even have a video up yet of the 1K, but we will. This is pretty cool. Well, like that isn't.
And this was in response to a customer.
Yeah, directly in
calling
response, right? You know, we have the Commander. I guess now I'd say line. But we've got a Commander for the 857 and the 891.
891.
And those are both real popular rigs. We've gotten a huge amount of feedback, and that's allowed us to make. And most of them you wouldn't even notice, but it's allowed us to make small improvements as that product line matures. But the ICOM 7100 is notoriously difficult to deal with. The form factor of the head unit is great when it's like sitting on a bench in front of you, but to mount it, to store it, to secure it. I guess we kind of accepted that challenge.
Yes, we did.
So this is fundamentally it is a Commander. Same concept. It's gonna protect your radio, mount the radio, protect the radio, power the radio. It's got USB, solar controller, AC charge controller, a place for the microphone, some small storage opportunities. It remotes the antennas. It's got a grounding lug, but it's just that easy to. If you choose to remove the head unit and operate like this. And we've got some rubber bumpers on 3D printed brackets that are positioned just so they just rub on the side of that head unit as you press it in. And once you press it in, it gets cradled here. It's like a lot of things. It looks simple now. Right?
It wasn't so simple.
But there's so many, you throw out so many ideas before you finally refine it to something that somebody else walks in and they go, oh, well, that's simple. Right. So it is simple, happily. And that's part of what we were trying to do. So yeah, new stuff, the 1K and the new Commander 7100, both of which are on the website. And there's not a video either yet for the 7100. No.
And one that's not quite as new is the Pilot.
Yes. Now we've got the Pilot G1 up on the site and have for some time, and that's a popular device. But yeah, I guess by way of I don't know, you're going to mention the Pilot. That's good. That's all
leaked.
Yeah, there's a Pilot G2. In fact, we got pieces off of one of the CNCs a couple hours ago, and Josh is working on putting together.
So we can wait for the next half hour to give any details on that.
What I can say about that Pilot is I think we'd put it up alongside anything of a similar form factor and have the most stored energy. Yeah, that's going to be
pretty amazing for as small cases that's in.
Yep, yeah, 33 amp hours in a 30 caliber can.
That's amazing.
Right, the Pilot G1 is 20 amp hours.
And that was good.
Yeah, a year ago that was great. But yeah, it's going to cost a little bit more than the G1. I don't think we're going to continue the G1. You know, the G2 will probably outright replace it. But in terms of bang for your buck, it's a lot in a very small form factor. I'm sure we're forgetting something, but I don't know.
We probably are, but the good thing is we intend on doing this once a week.
Going to try to.
If we can, and any questions that you may have, we'd love to hear from you in the comments on the YouTube video. You can comment in the comment section.
I think we'll both try to keep an eye on the video, right? To be able to answer questions. Right. I know I'll be watching it.
And, or give us a call or email us. It's either Bill or Sergio at portableuniversalpower.com. You can shoot us an email, and we'd be glad to address your questions. Or if you have any suggestions, we're always open to hearing what people think. I mean, what we want to do is have the best products out there in this area, and if we can improve them, that's what we want to do. Most of our good ideas we steal from customers, with permission. Yes. Yes. Okay, so I'll remember this every time, hopefully. Like, subscribe, and share.
Thanks a bunch for your time and your attention. And whether or not you're our customer yet, or never will be, or whatever, thanks for your support. We've got some awesome customers,
we do.
right? Amazing folks, and it's our privilege to be able to design and build what we do. Happy to do it, and we'd love to build you some stuff. So this is Bill and Sergio. We'll see you guys later.
Happy
Thanks.
New Year.
Yes.